It's a pleasure to be here to officially open this, the premier intellectual property event for APEC 2007, where we will be trading ideas. I must say that I understand IP to mean intellectual property, and I see it as an acronym, and in that sense, for me it's always an education. I'm not very good with acronyms, but I do very much appreciate the importance of intellectual property because without the development of ideas and the proper reward for them, the prospect of being an advanced society is really quite remote. And one of the important aspects of a framework of law that enables you to protect intellectual property and to have people properly rewarded for it is, of course, part of, I think, what a civilised society is all about. But this program is one where these issues will be able to be discussed and fleshed out, and I am sure in that sense, while intellectual property is a hot topic and trading ideas will be important, the creation, protection and enforcement in the Asia-Pacific region will be a major discussion here for the next 2 days. It's not a new topic for most of the countries in the region. It is one in which I frequently participate, and it's one in which I understand, for example, that a form of trademark was used in China during the construction of the Great Wall. Bricks in the Great Wall were stamped with the producer's marks so that the emperor could be assured of quality. So in our region, in that sense, trademarks are not altogether unknown to us. I also understand that the word pirate was used some 300 years ago in arguments before the United Kingdom's House of Commons about protecting property, and even then lawmakers had the same sorts of debates that we have today about the appropriate protection and use and access as well. The famous author Daniel Defoe once wrote that press piracy was an abuse upon authors, every jot as unjust as lying with their wives and breaking up their houses. The multilateral IP frameworks are not new either. The Berne Convention for the Protection of Literacy and Artistic Works, which is still among one of the most important intellectual property agreements, was ratified as early as 1886. Many nations recognised at this early stage that the results of innovation and endeavour were significant tradable commodities, and that harmonisation of standards between economies was desirable if trade was to flourish. But one has to recognise that there has been a remarkable level of activity in both intellectual property creation and intellectual property law development in the region over the past 20 years or so. Unfortunately, the last few decades have also been a period where technological developments have made it easier for intellectual property pirates and counterfeiters to profit unjustly. The digital age has made copying and distributing of material easier than ever before. So although we may have come a long way, so have those whom the laws that we have designed to protect property are directed against. So today I wanted to start by talking to you about the importance of Asia-Pacific economic cooperation. Our region is very dynamic and very diverse, rich. At present, APEC member economies account for approximately 40% of the world's population, 50% of the world GDP and 48% of world trade. And as APEC leaders noted in the year 2006 Hanoi Declaration that the unprecedented economic developments in our region are drawing our economies closer together. Australia is a willing partner in this trend. We are committed to the Bogor goals of free and open trade and investment in the Asia-Pacific by 2010 for industrialised economies and 2020 for developing economies. But while our economies are coming closer together, we all want to maintain our unique and diverse cultures. And this is where intellectual property protection does have an important role to play. It promotes artistic endeavour and the creation of national cultures. Protecting IP allows us to trade and to integrate our economies while maintaining controls over our own ideas and cultures. Strong IP laws encourage, for instance, Australian filmmakers to create films telling Australian stories like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Some of you may be familiar with it. And the Japanese filmmakers are encouraged to make films like Spirited Away. Strong IP laws mean that Japan can go and export great national brands like Toyota and be confident that its brand will be protected. IP laws promote cultural diversity, but this does not mean that the laws themselves have to be diverse. For example, in Australia, a range of culturally diverse material is encouraged by one set of laws. The songs of Kylie Minogue are protected in a similar way to the artworks of Indigenous Australians. We don't have different laws to protect different cultural material produced here in Australia. And equally, we protect the music and artworks of our trading partners through our copyright laws. Effective IP laws help to promote cultural diversity in the region and trade in ideas. And that is why Australia has been active in APEC and in trade agreement negotiations in promoting such standards. We are firm supporters of guidelines developed under the APEC Anti-Counterfeiting and Piracy Initiative. Effective intellectual property law is a goal that we should all be working towards achieving. And this may include harmonisation where appropriate. To achieve this goal will mean businesses can operate across APEC countries and know that they have similar sets of laws and IP principles protecting their intellectual property. It will mean that law enforcement agencies can work together to tackle piracy and counterfeiting. With the similar arsenal of laws available to them, they can work more effectively. In a technical area like intellectual property, sharing information and working towards common goals cuts red tape, reduces costs, facilitates trade integration. In order for us to progress the APEC trade and investment agenda, it is essential that we work together, sharing information, exchanging ideas and focusing on achieving our shared goals. And that is why this week's symposium is important. And I want to run briefly through that program, if I may. Harmonisation underlies the theme for today, the emerging global IP environment. We are fortunate to have two distinguished speakers who will shortly be addressing this topic. Dr. Francis Gehry is the Deputy Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organisation, and Alison Brimlow is the President-elect, as I mentioned before, of the European Patent Office. The sessions that flow from their presentations will include discussions about the latest strategies to protect, to commercially exploit and to enforce IP rights in this region. This is more relevant than ever before given our increasing business investment. And I think the APEC Business Advisory Council expressed it quite nicely in their recent report to APEC leaders when they stated that strengthening IP enforcement should be seen as a reoccurring recommendation. Today will also feature discussion on the impact of the increasing number of regional trade agreements and free trade agreements on national IP regimes and policy. In this regard, APEC trade ministers have instructed senior officials to continue to work on model measures for as many commonly accepted RTA and FTA chapters as possible. Now, the theme for tomorrow is IP challenges and doing business in APEC. We are fortunate to have two senior leaders from government and business who will be sharing their experiences and insights with you tomorrow. Dr. John Dudas is the Under-Secretary for Intellectual Property and Director of the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and Jack Chung is the Senior IP Counsel in Asia for General Electric China Company Limited. Tomorrow's discussions will also include important advice about the use of IP information as a business tool. We'll learn about the latest techniques for using IP information as a strategic business planning resource in exploring new regional market opportunities. Another session that is of particular interest to Australia will address counterfeiting and piracy in the Asia Pacific. For example, as many of you may know, we have recently strengthened our copyright laws to address present and emerging problems based by copyright piracy. I regularly speak about harmonisation in intellectual property laws. Even where harmonisation is a goal, it does not mean that countries cannot be innovative in developing their own IP laws. Last year, the Australian Government introduced some very innovative and interesting copyright laws aimed at making the law fairer for consumers but tougher on pirates. As I've said before, consumers shouldn't be treated like copyright pirates, and copyright pirates shouldn't be treated like consumers. We've introduced specific fair use type exceptions allowing format shifting of copyright material, such as copying CDs onto an iPod or other MP3 devices. And the recent Gowers review of the intellectual property regime in the United Kingdom has recommended a similar approach. On the enforcement side, we've decided to tackle lower-end criminal activity, such as offenders at market stalls, by introducing on-the-spot fines. We've also given our police the ability to track and recover proceeds made through major copyright crimes. We've made it easier for prosecutors and copyright owners to prove ownership and to use that information in court proceedings. We've tried to construct a copyright regime that tackles future issues, and this leads me to the grand finale of this symposium, a roundtable session on the future of IP in the Asia Pacific. And I'd like to speak briefly to this matter. In Hanoi last year, APEC leaders declared that member economies are committed to a vision of prosperity. We are seeking to build a secure and favourable business environment, and we are working towards a dynamic and harmonious but culturally diverse Asia Pacific by building strong societies for the well-being of all of our peoples. The key to achieving this goal is through economic growth promoted by trade liberalisation as well as business investment. But you won't obtain that trade liberalisation or obtain necessary investment if you can't maintain effective and high standards of intellectual property protection and enforcement. Now, I want to say for my own part that I am optimistic about the future of intellectual property. I went to China last year, and early this year I've been in India, and I've spoken to many officials about intellectual property enforcement. They were very interested in the approach that Australia was taking and want assistance in relation to the development of their own laws. In particular, I believe that China is increasingly taking intellectual property protection very much more seriously, because they are now developing intellectual property themselves. And if you have it, you really want to protect it. We all have mutual self-interest in intellectual property that promotes the creation and trading in ideas. And our important role in helping APEC to move in this direction is to ensure that we are able to work together. The only way that will ensure that our IP systems remain strong and vital will be to have that high level of cooperation. And I know that you will keep this very much in mind over the next 2 days as you work together in this very important symposium. And it is therefore now my great pleasure to declare this symposium officially open. Thank you very much.